£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to GB News Sunday. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend out there. Thank you for joining us this lunchtime. I'm Dawn Neeson, and for the next 2 hours, I'll be keeping you company on telly, online and on digital radio. We've got a cracking show coming up for you, so you really don't want to go anywhere. Coming up, we have rebellious Labour MP Rosie Duffield has called on Starmer to ditch the overtly sexist two-child benefit cap, describing as like something from The Handmaid's Tale. Does she have a point, though? Then Home Secretary, women trouble today. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says nail bars and car washes will be targeted by immigration officers as they step up enforcement action over the summer. But will this actually work to stop those small boats? And as pressure rises on President Biden to drop out of that campaign, former President Trump has made his first campaign appearance since last week's attempted assassination attempt. You are not going to want to miss this. But as we had so much fun yesterday, didn't we? This show, remember, is nothing without you and your views. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we'll be discussing today. Really, really easy. Visiting gbnews.com/your say and join the conversation. Or even easier, message me on our socials at GB News. But first, they said it wouldn't happen again, but I am reunited with Ray Addison. And here he is with your news headlines.
Thanks, Dawn. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 1, our top stories. In the United States, Donald Trump says nobody warned him of a possible threat in the moments before he was shot by a gunman in Pennsylvania. In an interview with Fox News, the Republican nominee said the lack of information was a mistake and the event should have been delayed. It comes as the Secret Service faces questions over how the would-be assassin was allowed to wander outside the security perimeter before taking his position on a roof. That was even after local officers had reported him acting suspiciously.
Nobody mentioned it. Nobody said there was a problem. And I would have waited for 15. They could have said, let's wait for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, something. Nobody said, I think that was a mistake. How did somebody get on that roof? And why wasn't he reported? Because people saw that he was on the roof.
Well, in his first rally since that assassination attempt, Donald Trump told supporters he took a bullet for democracy. He appeared alongside his vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance, in Michigan, their first joint appearance. Trump is hoping to win the crucial swing state that President Biden took back in 2020, and he showed a fighting spirit.
But what they do is misinformation and disinformation, and they keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week, I took a bullet for democracy. What did I do against democracy? Crazy.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is insisting that President Biden will win the US election despite continuing pressure on him from fellow Democrats to stand aside. The VP was making the case to stick with the 81-year-old, even as some big money donors expect him to end his campaign this week. She's increasingly being seen as a possible replacement for her boss, though former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is understood to be calling for a competitive process to select a new nominee. Back here, the Chancellor is saying that she's hoping to boost our individual pension pots by around £11,000. Rachel Reeves believes a review of retirement savings could unlock billions more in investment, with schemes encouraged to invest in assets such as infrastructure. The Treasury is saying it would boost economic growth and ensure better returns for savers. Ms Reeves is due to chair a meeting with the pensions industry tomorrow. James Murray is Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. He told GB News that smarter investments can help grow the economy.
We know that by the end of this decade, there will be around £800 billion of assets in defined contribution pensions. Now, we want to see that money working harder for pensioners, making sure that pensioners are getting the best possible return that they can, and that it's also more of it is invested in productive activities in the UK economy to help get economic growth up across the UK.
A hate crime investigation is underway after 3 pride flags were vandalised outside a Forest Gate railway station in East London. The Met Police is appealing for information after the pavement paintings were covered with spray paint in the early hours of Friday morning. That follows previous incidents back in June, which the force believes are linked. Officers have been trawling CCTV, making house-to-house inquiries and conducting forensic investigations, but so far no arrests have been made. The SNP is urging the Foreign Secretary to suspend the sale of arms to Israel. In a letter to David Lammy, the party said the government should take action now rather than wait for further reviews. Mr Lammy has said that there will be no blanket ban, but he will consider issues linked to offensive weapons being used in Gaza. The SNP says there's been 9 months of reviews into Israel's compliance with international law, and there's no need to wait for another one. And finally, a row has erupted between an auction house that sells Elvis Presley memorabilia and the icon's Graceland estate. Joel Weinshanker, who's managing partner of Elvis Presley's enterprises, told NBC News that he doubts the authenticity of some items recently sold by GWS Auctions. He says his suspicious mind first started racing when he spotted a black grommet jacket for sale, which was said to be worn by the singer back in 1972. However, he believes the real jacket is still hanging up in Graceland's closet. He also doubts the veracity of other items offered for sale, including jewellery and even the star's private jet. GWS Auctions is insisting, though, that the items are authentic. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Ray, and good afternoon to everyone who's already on the messages board. Remember, very easy to get in touch, especially Fred, who's just messaged saying, Dawn, you're perving over Ray Addison again. I was just admiring the links he'd written for that Elvis story. I mean, they were very impressive, and that aha at the end. He can shake his hips as well, evidently. Well, stay tuned for that one coming up next. Any case, let's get straight into today's story, shall we? A Labour MP has called the two-child benefit cap a heinous policy that is sinister and overly sexist. Rosie Duffield, MP for Canterbury, criticised the policy that means people will not receive additional state support if they have more than 2 children. And she particularly critiqued the so-called rape clause. Now, I wanted to do this story because I've got a brilliant panel for it today. 2 amazing, wonderful young women who are both mums. It's GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley is going to describe the actual story for us first. So, Olivia, what is happening with this story and why has Rosie Duffield got so angry about it?
Well, she's written this absolutely blistering piece in The Times, very, very critical of her leader, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Now, bear in mind, Rosie Duffield isn't one to toe the party line particularly. She fell out with Keir Starmer in a big way over gender issues. She's a gender-critical feminist, and she was furious when she felt that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party didn't stand by her. They seem to have just about made amends, but it's not particularly surprising that she was happy to speak out against the policy like this. Essentially, what the story is back in 2015, George Osborne, the then Conservative Chancellor, introduced a policy whereby parents with 2 children couldn't with more than 2 children, for any children subsequent to 2, parents couldn't claim child benefit. Now, it was a very controversial policy at the time, and plenty of Labour MPs spoke out against it. When Keir Starmer first came into office as leader of the opposition, he said that he would want to reverse the 2-child limit, as it is sometimes called, if he became Prime Minister. But on the campaign trail, he went a bit quiet about that. And when he was asked about it, he said that wasn't something that he could commit to. He would need to look at the figures, etc., etc. Now, Rosie Duffield has written this piece in The Times saying that that's essentially abhorrent of the Prime Minister. She says that she was a single parent living on tax credit, needed that single benefit to get by, and she thinks that limiting the number of children you can have to 2, essentially, she calls it punitive, withdrawing those benefits if you have more than 2 children, is anti-feminist. It's stopping women being allowed to reproduce in the way that they want to. So this is a huge attack. She is particularly critical of this rape clause, which you mentioned, which is there is a sort of loophole to the 2-child limit, which is if you can say that your 3rd child or any subsequent children were conceived as a result of rape, then you can still access those child benefits, which obviously means that women who've been through an unbelievably traumatic experience would have to share that experience with all sorts of third parties, all sorts of strangers, all sorts of civil servants in order to access those benefits, which she thinks is very problematic indeed. It'll be fascinating to see how Keir Starmer responds to this, because it is a very, very controversial policy. And I expect that there will be other Labour MPs who come out in support of Rosie Duffield about this.
Indeed, it has been very controversial, and all through the election campaign, Sir Keir was urged, wasn't he, to change his mind and go back on this one, but he has said that's not in the agenda at the moment. Olivia Utley, thank you very much for explaining. As Olivia just said, this is a very, very blistering attack on her boss, basically, by Rosie Duffield, who has been very outspoken about women's rights in general and has been a bit of a thorn in Keir Starmer's side all the way through. I said, very, very strong words. Now, let's see, as I said earlier, my panel maker this. I've got a great panel to discuss this story. They're both young mums. Author and broadcaster Amy Nickel and author and journalist Emma Wolfe. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining me. Now, I particularly wanted to do this story because I'm a big fan of Rosie Duffield's on the women's rights issues. But I thought it would work particularly well with you two discussing it. Now, the Sunday Times piece is very, very strongly worded. But is Rosie Duffield right? Is it time to scrap the 2-child benefit? Emma, I'm going to come to you first on this one.
It's a really tricky one, and I can actually see both sides. I'm no fan of George Osborne. This was, as Olivia says, this was brought in 2015. Yep. And you can see... you can actually see the argument, I can see the argument, many people who don't have children or do have children but have cut their cloth according to what they can actually afford. And you can see the argument for saying if you can't afford more than 2 children, you don't keep having more and more children. You can't have a family of 4, 5, 6 children if you can't afford them. Amy and I both know bringing up kids, especially young children in those early years, extremely expensive, childcare expensive. There are so many punitive, it's a very unchild-friendly, unfamily-friendly kind of environment that we're in, particularly at the moment. Keir Starmer's got his work cut out for him. This is the first sort of major rebellion, actually. He's had his 2-week honeymoon period. I think around a dozen Labour MPs signed an amendment to the King's Speech. He's going to be challenged on this tomorrow. You called Rosie Duffield rebellious. I think she's just a really strong advocate for women's rights. And just to give the other side of it, I can see her point. You don't want government interfering in women's reproductive choices. This is a fundamental part of being a woman, is having babies, bearing children, and actually perpetuating the human species. You know, we are actually kind of bringing up the next generation. But there is a cost, so I can see both sides.
Yeah, on the other side of this argument, as many our viewers will point out, is that it can be seen, the 2-child cap benefit, which I think would cost around about £3.5 billion if it was abolished. It targets the feckless and irresponsible people who just have children every 5 minutes and they rely on the state to look after them. Many people watching and listening today were saying, what is wrong with being responsible and being able to afford the children you have in life?
I think that's only possible to see that if you buy into the idea that you can plan your life, you can have a total, foolproof, you know exactly your circumstances going forward. And actually, I don't think anyone really knows how their circumstances are going to change or where life's going to take them, which is why I think everyone deserves a safety net. This is the whole point of welfare, isn't it? Whatever circumstance you get into, you can depend on the state that you've paid into to come
Not
to your
everybody
rescue.
pays into it, though, to be fair, Amy.
So if you have 3 children and then you go through a divorce or you lose a partner, suddenly you're not entitled to claim child benefit for that 3rd child. That doesn't seem to make sense. It doesn't feel fair to me. Also, what costs the state the most in the long run is definitely poverty. Poverty is so expensive, and the knock-on effects that show up in the criminal justice system, that show up in the NHS, is going to cost more in the long run. This is a quick and very effective way to stamp out child poverty, which would not only be to the benefit of those children, obviously, but also to society as a whole.
But, Amy, a lot of people would say that those feckless and irresponsible, and I'm quoting you, I'm quoting sort of viewers, those feckless and irresponsible people, and we do know them, who are having 5, 6, 7 kids, and literally huge families, and not even thinking about it, not planning at all. And there is free access to contraception, so you can, to a certain extent, plan your reproductive choices. That those people aren't necessarily even using the child benefit money to, you know, to avoid their children being in child poverty.
Yeah, but
those people are the ones who are, you know, using the money on cigarettes and alcohol, basically.
Do you know what? It's interesting, because when this came in 2017, it was prompted heavily by shows like Benefit Street, which highlighted those cases.
Yes.
Yeah. But I don't buy that those cases make up the majority, and we make rules, we make laws for the majority, and not for the minority. So that's why I think this is important, to put to one side that stereotype and think about the 40% of people claiming this who are in work, 2 parents in work who still need to claim these benefits.
How do you stop the minority, as you put it, abusing the system?
There's always going to be abuse of any system, really, isn't there? And when we look at the rates of tax avoidance in these areas, they pale into insignificance compared to tax avoidance on a bigger corporate level. So I think you just have to accept that there's going to be a little bit, but the amount of benefit that will come from it, and the good, outweighs that.
So it's worth mentioning, it's 21, I think it's £21 a week. It's not a huge...
It's not
a huge...
Scrapping the policy would cost around between £3 and £3.5 billion, and overall 440,000 families are affected by the cap, which is up £33,000 on last year. But Thomas has been in touch. Thank you very much. Thomas says there, how about you first stop paying for children of non-British citizens and then review the budget? What do we make to that?
OK, well, I think we need to be really careful. Children are children, and yes, I can argue until the cows come home about uncontrolled immigration and all of that. But if you have children in this country who have come over with their parents for whatever reason, I don't want any child going hungry, going cold, going without safety or a roof over their heads. Or, you know, that's not fair. We don't punish children.
You know, by making children suffer and live in poverty, the knock-on effects for the whole of society are well evidenced. So I think Thomas would be cutting his nose to spite his face there.
Absolutely. So do you agree with Rosie Duffield that this is a misogynistic policy, that this targets women unfairly, bearing in mind men are 50% of this equation as well? I mean, they do have something to do with where children...
They do, yes. It's not a family-friendly policy, is it? It's not a kind of family-encouraging policy. Rosie Duffield, in that piece, and the blistering piece in the Sunday Times, makes the point that there's sort of... that you're basically making a divide between the wealthier women and poorer women. But I think that all families and all women in this country are looking at the costs and looking at the... It's not just the costs, it's the toll that it takes in terms of responsibilities and in terms of your time and juggling work and childcare and all of that. I think that we live in an environment which does not encourage... like many European countries, Italy, Spain, they're really family-friendly countries. England is not a family-friendly country. And I speak as a single mother, and it's really hard. Like, everything is hard. I'm not complaining. I don't mean that in a sort of woe is me. But I mean that it's a struggle. It's a struggle. It's not made easy for you.
And it's interesting because Rosie Duffield said it's an attack on women's right to choose how many children they have. Well, I think that's a societal thing, isn't it? Because most women are constrained by the economy in choosing how many children they have, which is why our birth rate is...
It's very low, yeah,
1.4 per woman. Most women say they would love to have 3 children, but the constraints of society mean that we're having 1.
And the other side
the
of this
replacement rate.
We are an ageing population.
We are, and in some places, death rates are outstripping birth rates. And there are some areas of the country in which we're not even replacing at the rate that we need to. Yeah. But we also have mass uncontrolled immigration. So,
I mean, what final word is going to you, James? Thank you very much for getting in touch. James says, Dawn, it's simple. If you can't afford to feed your children, don't have them. And I know the argument to that. Right, thank you very much for getting in touch. Keep those messages coming in. Actually loving them, and lots of you getting involved already. And for all the best analysis and opinion on that story and much, much more, please do go to our website, which is at gbnews.com. Now, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Sunday. It's lunchtime. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend out there. But loads more coming up on today's show, so you really don't want to move too far from your telly. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says nail bars and car washes will be targeted as a way of stopping illegal immigration. Do you think she's got a point? Would it work? Don't go too far. You don't want to miss this one.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers, missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito, so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
Do you think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think, They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way. And maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend out there. Happy Sunday lunchtime. Now, wait till you hear this one. Nail bars and car washes will be targeted by immigration officers as they step up enforcement action over the summer. Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, says 1,000 civil servants working on now abandoned Rwandan scheme will start a new returns and enforcement programme, saying the programme will increase returns of those with no right to be here and make sure rules are respected and enforced. Raids on businesses suspected of employing illegal workers will be ramped up. They also, Labour this is, also hope that it will stop people coming over here on the small boats. I'm kind of thinking good luck with this one, but let's see how it goes. Amy, does this make sense to you?
Not the language used, the whole targeting, crackdown, because I think when you dig into who these people are, they're normally victims of human trafficking. They haven't had much of a say in how they've ended up being forced to work in these places. So I think it's fine to say they don't have a right to be in this country and they need to be... that needs to be challenged, but I think they're victims, so they need to be treated with compassion. My fear is that they get lobbed into one of these horrendous deportation centres where they tend to just fester for months at a time, really squalid conditions, overcrowded conditions, unsafe conditions, alongside actual criminals who are being deported. And my fear is that these people will be mistreated even more than they currently are.
I understand with the nail bars and the human trafficking, certainly sex trafficking as well, but what would you do with them then?
Well, that's the thing. If our deportation centres worked adequately and as they're intended to, then that would be fine and they could go back to their country and live their lives. However, at the moment, we've got a situation where we say people have no right to remain and then we stuff them in essentially prisons for months at a time.
Or so hotels at £7 million a day.
Well, no, because when you're found to have a visa that's expired, so the case you're talking about is asylum seekers awaiting a decision. They're in a separate accommodation.
We don't know. These are just, it's just illegal workers at the moment.
People that have outstayed their visas are generally put in places like Brookhouse. You can all look up Brookhouse and what happened there. There's a really interesting panorama on it, and it's awful. So we need to get on with actually moving people and treating people humanely and compassionately.
OK, so, I mean, Emma, does it make sense to scrap the Rwanda policy? And at the same time this week, by the way, Keir Starmer has also been talking with our other countries in the EU about offshore processing of migrants. Go work that one out. But does it make sense to scrap the Rwanda plan and then introduce a crackdown on nail bars and car washes, basically?
Was I the only person in the country who was deeply underwhelmed by this? Our new Home Secretary talking about a problem which needs, you know, swift and immediate action, and her answer to this is to crack down on nail bars and car washes. It's kind of bathos, isn't it? You know, when you need something big and you get something absolutely ludicrous. We've had night after night after night of lawless rioting, looting, fires across our communities in this country. And we've got a major problem with uncontrolled immigration. We've had thousands of people coming over on small boats. Do they really think that cracking down on nail bars and car washes, which, yes, are employers of illegal immigration, of illegal work, we know that, and human trafficking, and all of that, I completely agree. Do they think this is going to deter illegal, criminal people smugglers in any way? They will be laughing.
Well, 730 have crossed on small boats in the last 48 hours.
So they're clearly not. And I agree with Amy, there is a problem. In nail bars particularly, apparently there's a new sort of, a lot of Vietnamese women are being trafficked over to this country for specific work like nail bars and car washes. Lots of illegal men are being brought over. The idea that this would deter people in any way, I'm afraid that is for the birds. We need action. Keir Starmer talked about smashing the criminal gangs. Wait. Smashing the criminal gangs, and now we're going to target nail bars.
I think the problem is that there is no way to deter irregular asylum seeking, because since the 1980s, more and more money has been put into deterrence, and the rates have only gone one way, and that's up. Because as the world becomes more unstable, less equal, then people are going to seek asylum in richer countries. It's just pure common sense, surely.
How many of these people are asylum seekers, though, and how many of them are just here illegally?
Well, the last time that we actually processed the asylum claims, it was about 86% that had legitimate claims.
People always quote that statistic, don't they? And the reason that it was such a high percentage that were accepted is because it was such a low number that were actually processed.
Yes.
That is the problem. What do we also make... I mean, Sir Keir Starmer has been having a meeting with his European counterparts today about offshore processing for migrants. Sounds quite similar to Rwanda.
Yeah, it did sound very interesting, this idea that he's going to be possibly taking some asylum seekers in return for being able to return some illegal immigrants. And just to Amy's point, just because people want to come to this country, I hate to sound really cruel, but just because economic migrants want to come to this country and want benefits and want a better standard of life, it doesn't mean that we have to accept them. It doesn't mean that our borders have to be as completely open and uncontrolled as they want them to be.
But the more we deny our responsibilities to accept a fair number, the more there's going to be chaos at the border, because the more demand there will be from...
No, we're offering something. We don't have to accept anybody.
We accept asylum claims from about 3 different countries. So that's why you see, like on Friday, with the Sudanese lady that lost her life on the boat, because we're not offering anything to for more countries and more nationalities. And the more we narrow that down, the more we open up this world of chaos.
The vast majority are young
economic migrants.
Men.
But there's never any evidence to back this up. And when Suella Braverman, when she was Home Secretary, was challenged about people gaming the system, she was only able to provide examples of 4 people.
Look at the boats. You can see the economic migrants are coming here and disappearing into the system.
And I find it frustrating when people say these are fighting age men, which innately suggests they are a threat to us, and forgets that we have the family reunification visa. So if men do arrive, then they can seek to bring their families over safely. You wouldn't put your child and wife on a boat unless you really, really didn't see any other option. And there is another option.
Why, if they are planning to bring their families over safely and legally afterwards, do they destroy their paperwork and their passports?
Possibly because we currently only accept 3 different nationalities.
If you've got a genuine asylum claim...
That's how the law works. Those are the rules.
I feel like if you're in that situation, if you're on that boat, you can't have much of a choice. Because who would do it?
What, and you've travelled all the way through Europe, through many other safe countries to reach Britain?
But this argument comes up all the time, doesn't it? And you forget that we colonised 65% of the world, and people speak British, and people have an affiliation with Britain. They have family in Britain. So if you've taken this journey, why not do that last stretch so that you could be with your family? If you've got nothing left, if you get on a boat with none of your possessions, you've left your home, you've left your family.
You've got your mobile phone. What do you mean? I don't...
Most people arrive without shoes because the shoes have been destroyed by the seawater and the boat fuel. These aren't people with much to flaunt when they arrive. These are people with nothing.
I mean, well, then we need to look again at the system, but the law is the law, and the reason that we only accept migrants from a certain number of countries is because those are the ones that are deemed to be genuinely fleeing persecution or fleeing very, very dangerous situations. I'm afraid the vast majority of people are coming here for a better standard of life. And while I understand that, you see what happens to a country when we are absolutely overwhelmed with new arrivals.
We are not overwhelmed. The numbers last year were 45,000. The numbers so far this year are up 10,000. These are not overwhelming numbers.
Migration's well over 1 million.
Let us know what you think out there. You've heard what Amy and Emma think. What do you think? I mean, targeting nail bars and car washes. Is that going to work? But we do have to move on, and there is some good news coming up for you. There is still plenty of time to grab your chance to win £30,000 in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year. What would you do with that extra cash? I know what I'd do, but I'm not allowed to enter, but you are, and here's how you do it.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Oh, good luck indeed. Just imagine the summer holiday you could have with that. I can't enter, unfortunately, but you can, so go for it. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News Sunday, and there's loads more coming up on today's really, really packed show. But first, it's that young man, Ray Addison, with your news headlines for you.
Cheers, Dawn. 32 minutes past 1, our top stories. Over in the United States, Donald Trump says nobody warned him of a possible threat in the moments before he was shot by a gunman in Pennsylvania. In an interview with Fox News, the Republican nominee said the lack of information was a mistake and the event should have been delayed. It comes as the Secret Service faces questions over how the would-be assassin was able to wander around outside the security perimeter before taking his position on a roof, even after local officers had reported him acting suspiciously. And in his first rally since that assassination attempt, Donald Trump told supporters he took a bullet for democracy. He appeared alongside his VP running mate, J.D. Vance, in Michigan, their first joint appearance. Trump is hoping to win the crucial swing state that President Biden took back in 2020 and seems to be showing a fighting spirit. Well, meanwhile, Kamala Harris insists that President Biden will win the US election, despite continuing pressure from fellow Democrats to stand aside. The VP was making the case to stick with the 81-year-old, even as some big-money donors expect him to end his campaign. She's increasingly being seen as a possible replacement for her boss. Back here, the Chancellor is saying she's hoping to boost our pension pots by 11 grand. Rachel Reeves believes a review of retirement savings could unlock billions more in investment, with schemes encouraged to invest in assets such as infrastructure. The Treasury says it would boost economic growth and ensure better returns for savers. And a hate crime investigation is underway after 3 pride flags were vandalised outside a Forest Gate railway station in East London. The Met is appealing for info after the pavement paintings were covered with spray paint in the early hours of Friday. Officers have trawled CCTV, made house-to-house inquiries and conducted forensic investigations. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Addison. Now, remember, let us know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay and join the conversation or message me on our socials. We're at GB News. Many of you have been getting in touch. Some I can even read out, but I will be coming to those more soon. And there's lots more coming up on today's show for you to talk about. As pressure rises on President Biden to drop out of the campaign, former President Trump has made his first campaign appearance since last week's attempted assassination. You're not going to want to miss what he had to say. All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. You can put the kettle on, but don't go too far. It's great stuff.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next few days, some rain at times, but equally when the sun comes through it should feel pleasantly warm for the time of year. We've got a small wedge of high pressure moving in from the west, giving a lot of fine weather today, but notice low pressure gathering out towards the west. That will start to feed outbreaks of rain in across the northern parts of Northern Ireland there as we head into the afternoon. A few showers towards the north and west of the UK elsewhere, certainly towards the northwest of Scotland, a good scattering of showers into the afternoon and fairly breezy here as well. The best of the sunshine the further south and east you go, and in the sunshine towards the southeast of England, it should feel pleasantly warm, temperatures up to 23, even 24 Celsius, that's into the mid-70s in Fahrenheit, nearer towards the high teens towards the north and northwest of the UK. So to end the day, we'll see a scattering of showers across Scotland, a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers here. The best of the sunshine out towards the east and southeast of the country, with temperatures into the high teens in places. Further south into Northern Ireland and the far northwest of England, outbreaks of rain starting to come in from the west, so pretty damp end of the day here. Whereas across England and Wales, apart from a few showers out towards the west, plenty of fine weather to end the day, particularly across central and southeastern parts of England. And here we'll still see temperatures into the low 20s Celsius to end the afternoon. As we go through the evening into the overnight period, those outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland will start to push eastwards to affect parts of southern Scotland and the north of England too. Some of those outbreaks of rain could well turn quite heavy by Monday morning. Whereas towards the north there, clearer spells, and some clearer spells towards the southeast too, with outbreaks of rain moving in across Wales and the southwest of England. Turning quite chilly towards the north, temperatures into single figures here, but elsewhere holding up into the low to mid-teens. As for Monday, well, those outbreaks of rain across the central slice of the UK there give way to brighter skies with a scattering of showers into the afternoon, a few heavy, potentially even thundery showers in places. Further south across England and Wales, outbreaks of rain clear towards the east to give way to a brighter afternoon, and holding on to some brightness towards the far north of Scotland too, with temperatures peaking in the southeast at 24, possibly locally 25 Celsius.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to GB News Sunday. I'm Dawn Neeson. In particular, David. Hi, David. Thanks for getting in touch. I'm curious, Dawn, do the guests actually see these comments with a little emoji?
Yeah, we do.
Yes, as Amy's just said.
Don't worry, guys.
Yes, we do. I still have Amy Nicol and Emma Wolf, so keep
you.
the comments coming in. We're loving it here. In any case, this is GB News Sunday, and I am Dawn Neeson, and we are on telly, online and on digital radio, but we're going across the pond because we have to, because their politics are even more mad than ours. President Trump has made his first campaign appearance since last week's attempted assassination. Remember the horror of that last week? Couldn't quite believe what you were talking about. It also marked his first appearance alongside his recently announced running mate, J.D. Vance. It comes as pressure rises on President Biden, who's out with COVID, remember, to drop out of the campaign, with Trump discussing Nancy Pelosi's lack of support for Biden overnight. Have a listen.
Did you see Nancy Pelosi is selling out Biden now? Did you see? She turned on him like a dog. Well, I don't know if he should continue. All of a sudden, where did that come from? She was 100%. All of a sudden, she's not sure. Not sure means he's gone.
Well, I mean, this is our Trump talking at the rally in Grand Rapids in Michigan. For the first time, he has J.D. Vance, who is self-confessed, this is what he says, white trash, proper working-class American, who at 39 is now in the shout of being vice president. An amazing story in its own right. But American politics, ladies, I mean, they are absolutely amazing to watch. I mean, if you're not engaged in American politics, the fact that you've got Joe Biden, 81 years old, quite clearly suffering mental problems, degenerative mental health problems, and Donald Trump, who was like a week ago was just centimetres probably from death.
Literally.
What do you make of his latest rally and what's been happening?
Well, I'm so glad that this is all, I mean, obviously not the assassination attempt, but I'm so glad that American politics are electric right now because A, I'm loving it, and B, our first 2 weeks of a Labour administration, for me, have been deathly dull and really quite depressing. So this has my full attention. And yes, I was going on air a week ago last night, and it was all happening, and it was very, very exciting, very dramatic. And I am full of admiration and respect for Donald Trump.
Never.
Yes, I am. Hearing him last night saying, what have I ever done for democracy? I took a bullet for democracy. If that doesn't move you, if that doesn't stir you, I'm going to say that, if that doesn't stir you in some way, you're not a human being. The way that Trump is speaking at the moment, at those rallies, that Michigan rally last night, the way that he reacted in the moment, the split second, when a bullet almost killed him.
If he hadn't have turned his head one way...
If he hadn't turned his head, and when he says, you know, there but for the... Well, he's effectively saying there but for the grace of God. You can be religious or not religious, but he's onto something. Something happened, and something is happening in American politics at the moment, and it's very, very exciting. And as for Joe Biden, I think we all acknowledge that he probably has a few days. Quite jealous of him hanging out at his Delaware... I keep hearing Delaware beach house. It just sounds so calm, so remote, so lovely and isolated. But no, I mean, he says, I'm sick. So he's sick with COVID, but there is also this ongoing issue of the cognitive decline, the marked cognitive decline, and the ebbing away, the pressure mounting, but the ebbing away of support for him. And now Democrats really coming out and just saying, game's up.
And more important, they're losing donations as well. I mean, 30 big-name Democrats have come out and said it's time to go. Even the Clintons.
When they withdraw their money, the game's up.
This is the problem, isn't it?
I mean, people are now saying, Dawn, he should be resigning as president, not just not running, but resigning as president.
Which there is a constitutional way that they can do that. But you weren't even slightly impressed by Trump's reaction when he got up after and going fight. I mean, that shows some level of courage and strength, surely, Amy.
I just think he's political through to the core, where everything is a performance, even nearly getting killed. That he's got that political instinct to be able to do that is almost getting robotic to me. He's an entertainer. He's very fun to watch. But when he says he took a bullet for democracy, here's the biggest threat to democracy in modern history, I would say, since World War II.
Why do you say what? It's
maybe Putin. Maybe Putin is slightly more of a threat to democracy, or Kim Jong Un.
Well, who's opening the door for Putin? Donald Trump will open the door for Putin. I think one of the main. If you think about the audience that were watching that last night and going, yeah, Donald, you're doing really well. Putin was definitely there, rubbing his knees. Woohoo, this is going to go my way. Donald Trump has said he wants to expand the presidential power. He wants to stuff the civil service full of his loyalists. He still questions the authenticity of the 2020 election. He still says things like crooked Joe Biden, cheat Joe Biden. He's stuffed the Supreme Court full of, again, Trump supporting judges. So let's look at what happened when they overthrew Roe versus Wade. This man is a danger to American democracy. So to hear him say he took a bullet for democracy, he's the biggest threat to democracy there is.
How strong do you think Joe Biden, if he stays, and he sounds determined to do so, is furious at fellow Democrats trying to get rid of him, do you think that would be more of a threat to democracy?
I just find it astonishing that people like Amy can say that Donald Trump, that you can be so disrespectful of all of those Americans. This is how democracy works, right? We all get a vote. You don't get a vote for the American president. That's their choice. All of this is on the record. All of these things that you say that Donald Trump has done, people are voting for him. His popularity in the polls absolutely through the roof. He's going to win. You asked me about Biden, whether he's strong or not. No, that I think Trump will win in November, and I think there's pretty much no doubt about that. But it's so kind of why do we always assume that people in America are too thick, or Brexit voters are too thick, to look at the facts, to weigh out the evidence, and to make their choice? I don't like everything Donald Trump has done. I really don't. I don't particularly like his attitude to women. I don't find him a very wildly savoury character. I don't like his views on abortion and things like that. But I still think, overall, he is a leader. He has the right economic ideas, for example. He has the right ideas on make America great again, putting his own country
Migration
first,
is his big thing.
controlling his borders. People are responding to that. Why, oh why, do you keep talking about people as though they're thick, as though they can't make their own
I did not say
choice?
anyone. I did not say anyone was thick. I said I have concerns about putting America first, about America being the most isolationist that it's been in living memory.
Why are they voting for him?
That is very concerning for foreign policy that will affect us.
Why are they voting for him?
Honestly, I think it's turned into political entertainment, and he puts on a great show.
On that, we will have to leave our particular great show for a short break. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Sunday, and there's lots more coming up on today's show. Is this the summer we could be witnessing the end of cinema's woke dogma era? Stay tuned to find out why. All of that and much more coming.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that in, I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helps people who are selling the magazine.
Big Issue, no?
Yes, The Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know. And there will be a lot more. And he's been getting the money to do this. And I think he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, you might have noticed, for the past decade, the cinema industry has been working hard to increase diverse representation, including more LGBT plus characters, more disabled characters, everything you can think of to tick boxes. But some people are disappointed that the latest Hollywood big hitter, Inside Out 2, did not make their teenage protagonist, that's the little blue cartoon one, I think, gay. And Twister is out for adults as well, which is a disaster movie about twisters that doesn't involve a message about climate change. So, is this the end of woke cinema? Should we celebrate? Amy Nicol, take it away.
There's nothing woke about LGBT inclusion, surely. Just trying to exist
It's
like
a
the
kid's
rest of
cartoon.
us.
It's a blue cartoon character. Why does she have to be a lesbian?
Why not, I guess? What's woke about that?
The point of this story is, like, everyone in Inside Out 2, which is, if you haven't seen it, it's good fun, actually. It's good fun. Everyone's Inside Out 1, the original one, everyone assumed this character was a lesbian, and Gen Z were going
Yeah, so it's actually the girl whose head you're in. That's Riley.
Yes.
And I'd say, from watching Inside Out 2, that she definitely is gay. It's heavily implied. But
she
again,
doesn't come
why is that woke? Why is that woke?
I
I totally get what you mean about the political messaging about climate change in Twister, yes, but I don't get what's woke about LGBT inclusion.
Can I be controversial?
No, go on.
Can we just stop the obsession with everybody's sexuality and everybody's gender? I don't care what colour, what flavour, what shape your genitals are. I don't care
She's kind
who
of
you're
blue
sleeping
as
with.
well, by the way.
Yeah, she's a cartoon character and she's a child, right? She's a minor. Can we stop the obsession? Kids don't need gender and sexuality and gender fluidity and who's sleeping with whom shoved down their throat. I don't need it shoved down my throat in every film, every TV series, every book. We just don't need it. Can we just make films that don't care about LGBT?
Do you know a film that
don't
was
go on
that,
about
that
it?
I think we'll all agree was very woke, was Barbie. And it was the most successful film of last year.
I hated Barbie.
We're so not over
It
woke
was so
cinema.
not feminist. It was the opposite of feminism.
I liked it.
Oh, I know, I hated Barbie. But I mean, sort of like Twister, which is a shoo-in for an environmental global boiling, you're all going to die next week with climate change. That is people running into storms and no one mentions climate change.
But Dawn, with most of your friendships, do you sit around discussing their personal relationships or their sexuality or their gender? You just accept people as they...
discuss mine.
But I think that's what these films are trying to do.
I just interact and work and accept and be friends with people for whatever they are.
But that's the whole point of including characters in films, incidentally.
But we're now discussing whether the 13-year-old girl is a lesbian or not, and why didn't they make this? Why didn't they...
A blue
cartoon girl. Why didn't they foreground her homosexuality?
But because I think that we've seen the argument would be we've seen so much heteronormativity for as long as time can be, and actually that has been quite unrealistic.
But I don't want the word heteronormativity, which, by the way, you said beautifully.
That's a long word.
I don't want that anywhere near children's cartoons.
It's the weekend. Should we find out what the weather's doing where you are right now? Thank God for that. Here's your weather forecast.
Sorry, darling.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK during the week ahead. Most of us seeing some outbreaks of rain at times, but when the sun pops through, it should feel pleasantly warm for the time of year. We've seen a ridge of high pressure moving in from the west, giving plenty of fine weather across many areas today, but notice low pressure gathering out there towards the west of Ireland, and that'll start to push outbreaks of rain in across Northern Ireland, eventually reaching parts of southern Scotland and the north of England into the early hours of Monday. Some of that rain turning quite heavy in nature by Monday morning itself. Whereas towards the north, we'll see some clear spells. And outbreaks of rain will also work in across Wales and the far southwest of England, but elsewhere across England and Wales we'll see some clearer spells, holding up at 14 or 15 Celsius, so quite a mild night in the south, but turning quite chilly under the clear spells towards the far north of Scotland. So the new working week gets off to a fine start across the far north of Scotland. 1 or 2 showers, but plenty of sunshine to start Monday here. Whereas across central and southern parts of Scotland, more in the way of cloud around. There'll be some outbreaks of rain, locally on the heavy side, and a few heavy bursts still across parts of Northern Ireland, into parts of northern England too. So a pretty damp start across the central parts of the UK. Further south, outbreaks of rain moving in across Wales into some western parts of England, whereas across central, eastern and southeastern England, Monday gets off to a fine start. There'll be some sunshine around and temperatures not doing too badly at this stage either. As for the rest of Monday, well, it's the central slice of the UK, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and the north of England, which will generally see the worst of the conditions, outbreaks of rain giving way to sunshine and a scattering of showers. Some of those showers could well turn quite heavy, even thundery into the afternoon. Across England and Wales, outbreaks of rain clear away towards the east, giving way to a much brighter afternoon, and some brightness towards the far north of Scotland too. In the sunshine in the southeast, we'll see highs of 24 or 25 Celsius. Into the evening on Monday, further outbreaks of rain will push in across Northern Ireland. We'll hold on to some showers across parts of Scotland, the north of England, across parts of Wales and the southwest of England too. Elsewhere, a fine end to the day. Fine for many around the middle part of the coming week, but by Thursday we'll see further outbreaks of rain moving in from the west and quite warm when the sunshine comes.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to GB News Sunday. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend out there. Thank you for joining us this lunchtime. Thrilled to have your company. I'm Dawn Neeson. For the next hour, we'll be keeping you company on telly, online and on digital radio. We've got a really cracking hour coming up, so it's only an hour, you don't want to go anywhere. Are we witnessing the great Brexit betrayal? A new law is being drawn up by ministers which could put the UK manufacturers in lockstep with the EU on product safety rules. We're mirroring them, basically. But are we sleepwalking, or are Labour sleepwalking us back into the EU? Then, after violent clashes between rioters and police in Dublin at a site being renovated to accommodate asylum seekers, the Irish government says they must do more to engage with people who have genuine questions over increased migration. And in an exclusive interview with GB News, newly elected MP Natalie Fleet reveals in a shocking interview how she was groomed and bravely revealed what happened when she became a mum at 15. But this show is nothing without you and your views, and frankly, I'm loving them today. You are very naughty yous like out there, so do keep them coming. And this is how you do it. It's very simple. Whether you're talking about the stories we're talking about, you want to say something nice about us maybe, all you have to do is go to gbnews.com/yoursay and join in the conversation. Say whatever you want, basically. Or message me on our socials. We're at GB News. But first, it's what we've all been waiting for, isn't it? It's those news headlines with delectable Ray Addison.
Thank you, Dawn. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 2, our top stories. In the US, Donald Trump says nobody warned him of a possible threat in the moments before he was shot by a gunman in Pennsylvania. Speaking to Fox News, the Republican nominee said the lack of information was a mistake and the event should have been delayed. Comes as the Secret Service faces questions over how the would-be assassin was able to wander outside the security perimeter before taking his position on a roof. That was even after local officers had reported him acting suspiciously.
Nobody mentioned it. Nobody said there was a problem. And I would have waited for 15. They could have said, let's wait for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, something. Nobody said, I think that was a mistake. How did somebody get on that roof? And why wasn't he reported? Because people saw that he was on the roof.
In his first rally since that assassination attempt, Donald Trump told supporters he took a bullet for democracy. He appeared alongside his vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance, in Michigan. It was their first joint appearance. Trump is hoping to win the crucial swing state that President Biden took in 2020, and he's showing a fighting spirit.
But what they do is misinformation and disinformation, and they keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week, I took a bullet for democracy. What did I do against democracy? Crazy.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris insists President Biden will win the US election, despite continuing pressure on him from fellow Democrats to stand aside. The VP was making the case to stick with the 81-year-old, even as some big-money donors expect him to end his campaign. She's increasingly being seen as a possible replacement for her boss, though former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is understood to be calling for a competitive process to select a new nominee. Back here, the Chancellor says she's hoping to boost our pension pots by around £11,000 each. Rachel Reeves believes a review of retirement savings could unlock billions more in investment, with schemes encouraged to invest in assets such as infrastructure. The Treasury says it would boost economic growth and ensure better returns for savers. Miss Reeves is due to chair a meeting with the pensions industry on Monday. James Murray is Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. He told GB News that smarter investments can help grow the economy.
We know that by the end of this decade, there will be around £800 billion of assets in defined contribution pensions. Now, we want to see that money working harder for pensioners, making sure that pensioners are getting the best possible return that they can, and that it's also, more of it is invested in productive activities in the UK economy to help get economic growth up across the UK.
A hate crime investigation is underway now after 3 pride flags were vandalised outside of Forest Gate railway station in East London. The Met is appealing for information after the pavement paintings were covered with spray paint in the early hours of Friday morning. Follows previous incidents in June, which the force believe are linked. Officers have trawled CCTV, made house-to-house inquiries and conducted forensic investigations, but so far no arrests have been made. The SNP is urging the Foreign Secretary to suspend the sale of arms to Israel. In a letter to David Lammy, the party said the government should take action now rather than wait for further reviews. Mr Lammy has said there will be no blanket ban, but he will consider issues linked to offensive weapons being used in Gaza. The SNP says there's been 9 months of reviews into Israel's compliance with international law, and there's no need to wait for another one. And a row has erupted between an auction house that sells Elvis Presley memorabilia and the icon's Graceland estate. Joel Weinshanker, who's managing partner of Elvis Presley's enterprises, told NBC News that he doubts the authenticity of some of the items recently sold by GWS Auctions. He says his suspicious mind first started racing when he spotted a black grommet jacket for sale, which was said to be worn by the singer back in 1972. However, he believes the real jacket is still hanging in Graceland's collection. He also doubts the veracity of other items offered for sale, including the star's private jet. GWS Auctions is insisting that the items are legit. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Ray. Although after the Elvis story, at the very least, I was expecting a little bit of a hip swivel thing. Nothing, honestly. People I have to work with these days. Right, OK, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Are we witnessing the great Brexit betrayal? A new law is being drawn up by ministers which could put UK manufacturers in lockstep with the EU on product safety rules. 4 former cabinet big guns blasted Sir Keir Starmer for trying to trade away our freedoms in a bid to cosy up the EU. In a way, we're sort of like kind of mirroring what the EU are doing with their regulations. But here to explain it more is GB News political correspondent, the wonderful Olivia Utley. Olivia, I always come out in hives when anyone mentions the B word, and it's the front page of the Sunday Express today. We are being betrayed, evidently. Can you tell us a bit more about what's going on here?
Well, Keir Starmer has said repeatedly, ever since he first became leader of the opposition and throughout the whole campaign, that he would, as Prime Minister, never think of rejoining the European Union or the single market. But we know that obviously Keir Starmer was a pretty engaged campaigner for the Remain campaign, and then he was a pretty engaged campaigner for the Rejoin campaign after Britain left the EU. He's now said that he's on board with Brexit, but what Brexiteers are worried about is that although Britain is not on track to leave the single market or to rejoin the single market or rejoin the EU, Keir Starmer could end up sort of rejoining the EU in a piecemeal way by the back door. So making Britain's legislation in line with all of the EU's legislation. At the moment, the talk is about a manufacturing deal, so making it possible for the UK to have a sort of zero export deal with the EU on manufacturing by putting all our regulations in line with the EU. Rachel Reeves has also talked about a similar deal on food safety, and there are other deals sort of being discussed in back rooms as well. So we could end up in a situation where, although Britain isn't technically in the EU or the customs union or the single market, it sort of is to all intents and purposes. And for many Brexiteers, that amounts to a betrayal of Britain's sovereignty, because we left the EU in order to be able to make our own rules on issues like this. So if you re-sign up to basically all of the EU's rules, it's sort of Brexit in name only. Hate to bring that phrase up again, but that is arguably what we could end up in.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much for mentioning the B word several times in that piece there, but very nicely explained. Thank you very much, Olivia. Now, let's see what my panel make of this one. I know what one of them's going to think, that's for sure. So I'm going to go to you, Emma, first on this one. Now, bearing in mind, Labour won back a lot of people in the Red Wall who originally voted very strongly for Brexit. Is this going to lose them support literally 2 weeks in?
I think it's valid to question. Look, we've just seen Keir Starmer hosting that summit, that big EU summit at Blenheim Palace. And he was very buddy-buddy with many of his EU counterparts, you know, obviously rebuilding. And to some extent, we do need to rebuild that relationship with the EU. It's been awful since Brexit. And, you know, Macron and Starmer looked very kind of one of those bromances all over again. But I do think that there's a valid question. You know, 17.4 million people voted for Brexit. I think it's valid to look at whether we are starting, whether we're going to be rejoining by stealth, you know, whether we're going to become closer and closer aligned going forward with EU, so that, as Olivia says, we're effectively in lockstep with them, even though Starmer has been clear that that he's not going to overturn the Brexit referendum and that he's not seeking to sort of rerun that horribly divisive debate. But I mean, 17.4 million people, what did they ask for? They didn't ask for him to start overturning things or to start going along with the EU. So I think that is valid to scrutinise him.
If you put to the 17.5, was that right?
4, yeah.
17.4 million people. Did you vote so that you could have a slightly more powerful Hoover that we can't sell in the EU? I doubt they would care that much. This is about compliance with EU product safety rules, which is things like hairdryer speeds, so that we can sell them to the EU bloc. Otherwise, we can't. So this is about the economy. If we said, but we now know Brexit cost the economy billions, more than COVID. Surely this is just sensible. Like, you say take away, the article says taking away Brexit freedoms. Do we really need those freedoms that just mean our products are ever so slightly different? And it genuinely is things like Hoovers and hairdryers. We don't need that freedom, do we? I think people voted more for things like ending freedom of movement, which is totally in place. You don't need to feel threatened. And this little bit of annotation to Brexit is solely to benefit the economy.
It isn't just Hoovers and hairdryers. It is discussions about potentially taking asylum seekers, as we referred to earlier, in return for returning illegal immigrants. And Amy, you can justifiably go down to the micro detail and say slightly more powerful hairdryer, slightly more powerful Hoover that we can't then sell into the EU. I get that, but if you come out at a macro level, it was about saying British sovereignty, British rules for British people. We get to make the rules, not a bunch of unelected autocrats in the bureaucrats in the EU that we can't remove, that we don't get a vote for, making the rule, having rules imposed upon us. That's what people were voting for.
And people will still have that.
Well, ex-Brexit...
tiny tweak, which is not a Brexit betrayal. I think the Daily Express are being rather hysterical there.
Ex-Brexit Secretary Sir David Davis says mirroring EU regulations is clearly against the spirit of the referendum.
The spirit, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
That is so obstinate. That's like a very childish way.
But you've just used that kind of language about Donald Trump being a danger to democracy. You're happy to use that rhetoric when it suits you.
Donald Trump literally wants to stuff the civil service with his own loyalists and
David
Davis, the presidential power and potentially not leave office. He doesn't want to insist we have slightly more powerful hair.
He won't leave office. David Davis is making a point about the spirit of Brexit, the spirit of taking back our sovereignty.
If you think that spirit is worth billions
control
for the economy, so we all have less money. I think Brexit costs over £1,000 per household per year on average.
That's
if you
just
think that's
a nonsense.
Worth it for the spirit of Brexit,
the costs of Brexit are highly contested. I think it's more likely that putting the country into lockdown for 2 years and, you know, all of everything that's come from that has wrecked our economy. And arguing about Brexit for, 7 years now, that's wrecked our economy. And having young people on benefits and not working has wrecked our economy. There are many, many reasons why we've wrecked our economy, because we're in a terrible state.
But I think Brexit changed so much, didn't it? And arguably, I think Brexit also wrecked the Conservative Party. It changed their direction, it changed their leadership, it changed their whole ethos. And I think, arguably, Brexit is the moment that things changed in so many respects.
I think it certainly made politics a more divisive debate. Shadow Trade Secretary Kevin Hollinrake said a choice to mirror EU rules would lock the UK into EU rules and red tape and lock us out of meaningful trade agreements with other countries.
But why can't we just trade the EU standard... I keep saying hairdryers and hoovers, but it is very relevant. Why can't we just trade EU products with those safety rules with the rest of the world as well? I don't understand why that exempts us from trading with the rest of the world.
I'm not a trade expert. I'm not going to pretend to be.
It just doesn't really make sense. Compliance with the EU product safety means we can trade with the EU bloc and the rest of the world, surely. Not being in compliance with the EU safety rules exempts us from trading with the EU, our neighbours. Like, it makes sense.
Well, I mean, lots of people on here are saying this, and do keep the messages coming in. Kathy, for example, says, how is closer alignment to the EU going to affect the trade deals and fishing rights we have right now? This is undoing Brexit by the back door. Yeah. Migrant traffickers. Oh, that's not about that. Yeah, basically a Brexit by the back door. Kathy again points out Starmer is close to running a dictatorship. He's overturning the referendum and plans to change our constitution. And this is the problem with this, Emma.
We haven't even brought up the ECHR, Dawn.
Well, exactly.
But, you know, people...
Labour, because of the vast majority, can do pretty much what they want in any case.
And we need to be really, really clear about this. EU compliance in any shape or form. We voted to leave, whether you agree with it or not, we did vote to leave the EU. That's what Brexit meant. And it is a betrayal, and it does look like, you know, undoing Brexit or betraying Brexit by stealth when we then start to realign and to reform those relationships. That's not what people voted for. It was only a small majority, but it was a significant majority.
There's now more people with buyer's regret over Brexit. So do those people not have a say?
But
surely in a democracy we should consider the
Hold on. You see, you're already trying to overturn the referendum. You're saying that people who voted for it have now got regret.
I actually don't want to change the referendum. And I think Keir Starmer's made it clear that Labour don't want to change the referendum, but we want to make it work. And this is a tiny, tiny, tiny thing that will open up some doors to helping it actually work and be beneficial to this country.
Why do you think so many... I mean, this is a good point that James has just made. James, thank you for your message. Keir Starmer is very ill-informed. 17.4 million UK citizens, as we've mentioned, voted for Brexit in 2016. Does Starmer realise that 48% of them were Labour voters? And this is why the Conservatives under Boris Johnson got that landslide in 2019, because it was about Brexit.
Yeah, but it wasn't about this particular thing that we're talking about today that the Sunday Express has splashed on. It wasn't about compliance with EU product safety rules, which is all this tiny tweak is. We need to stop running away with ourselves and stop saying that this is undoing Brexit when it is just one tiny thing to make trade more simple.
I think there's a sense that it's the thin end of the wedge. That's what we're saying, that it becomes that we start to align more closely and this is the beginning. When they talk about the great Brexit betrayal on the Sunday Express, they're talking about the beginning of starting to undo what Brexit meant to 17.4 million people.
That betrayal started with the Vote Leave camp persistently lying and then the deal going through and then Boris Johnson making the worst Brexit deal. I always say it's like you ordered a pizza and it turned up upside down and covered in hair. You got your Brexit, but it was awful. So surely that's a bigger betrayal than what's happening now.
Unfortunately, we have to move on. But there's another rule that's being snuck in. It's a product safety ruling is about the flavour of our smoky bacon crisps. So could be more worrying than.
Hang on a minute. What? I changed it.
Exactly. So she's changed her mind completely now. It's the crisps that did it.
This gets serious.
For all the best analysis and opinion on that story, go to our website, gbnews.com. Very simple. And there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to escape from all this and win £30,000 in the Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest cash prize of the door. Just imagine what you could do this weekend. We spend a lot of money in one weekend. This summer with that amount of money. And here's how you can win it.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Paul.
Well, What can I say? Good luck. I can't enter it, unfortunately, but you can, so I'd get trying now. £30,000, what a summer. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News Sunday, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Now, after violent clashes between rioters and police in Dublin at a site being renovated to accommodate asylum seekers, the Irish government says they must do more to engage with people who have genuine questions about increased migration. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Now, the last time we spoke, we always talk about the topic of gender and your transition. So talk to me about now, though. What you've done is you've created a comic book about your life and about your transition to tell us things that perhaps the press and media don't talk about.
Yes, so throughout the years, I have always been persuaded to write a book, but I was never ready to disclose so much. And I've been working this beautiful comic book. I brought you a little copy. It's here. You can have a look into it later, where I'm detailing past experiences, growing up in Brazil and then moving to this country, and my struggles, the struggles that I had to go through to become the woman that I'm today. I'm a woman. I'm not a biological woman, but I am a woman. I just cannot have babies because I don't have the female organs. But I'm a woman inside out, therefore I use the female toilet. But what has been going on around, there are a lot of people, they regard themselves as being transgender when they're actually not. They don't have any psychological help, they don't have any medical help. They just wear female clothes and makeup and they call themselves female. And they're the ones using female spaces and take advantage of that. And that is what should stop and be controlled.
But that's the problem, isn't it? So what do you do to stop that? I mean, the suggestion was a third extra space. How would you feel about a third extra space where, you know, this is where if somebody is trans or any of those other things can use rather than using the female toilet?
I don't think that would work, actually, because these people that regard those people that regard themselves as being females in their minds, they still would use the female toilet.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Queer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday afternoon out there. Now, Simon Harris, the government of Ireland, has said must do more to engage with people who have genuine questions over public service provision in the increased migration situation. This comes after violent clashes between rioters and police at the former Crown Paints factory in Coolock in North Dublin, a site proposed to be converted into accommodation facility. This is something that is not just happening in Ireland, it's happening many, many places in the UK as well, isn't it? We've seen it before here. I'm joined now by GB News reporter Doogie Beattie to bring us up to date on this story. Doogie, thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is a story GB News have been covering for a while now. Can you bring us up to date on the latest developments?
Well, yes, this is all about immigrants being placed into a working class area, an area that sees a lot of social housing in it and very little infrastructure to deal with what is already there. And the residents here are very much up in arms because of that and saying, look, nobody asked us, could they bring more people into this area? And they're very worried about who exactly is coming in, because most of these immigrants that are coming in are unvetted, because Ireland has had not as many immigrants as England has had, but when you take the population of Ireland is only about 5.2 million. Well, you can imagine over a very short space of time that 1/5 of the population says that they do not see themselves as Irish. It is quite worrying. And a mother from this area will join me now, Jade Mitchell. Jade, tell us a little bit about your concerns here.
My concerns is they haven't even been put into this former paint factory yet. But yeah, the community is open arms. It's already falling apart. We have the Holiday Inn flooded with them as it is. So they're taking over our kids' local football pitches, our local parks, our playgrounds. We can't let our kids out to play as it is. So why would anybody not expect us to oppose of this? We don't want it. We've said no numerous times. No one is listening to us. I have 2 children myself. My daughter has not been allowed to walk down this road the past 2 weeks over what's been going on. It just can't happen.
So what do you see the answer being?
The answer being Coolock is saying no and we need to be listened to.
And there's no room?
There's no room. I can't get a home for my 2 children. I have a 14-year-old around here in a bedroom with no bedroom door because we just don't have it. We have no room.
Well, there you go. You've heard it from a mother of this area. They are very upset about what's happening here. And of course, Simon Harris has now said, the Taoiseach has now said that they need to talk and engage with the local community. But that was only after substantial civil disturbances here throughout the week.
Ray, Dougie, just very quickly, how did it happen that the community weren't even consulted?
Well, they weren't. They were just told that this was going to be an asylum centre, and this is happening right across Ireland, and it's mostly in the working class areas that it's happening. What happens is this is former industrial sites, and the community here actually wanted this industrial sites for other things for themselves, including social housing, and were denied it. Then they were told that the site was bought over, and the first they knew of it was when workmen appeared in the site. And the horrifying thing for this community is they voted in the last elections, and they voted in councillors of their own choosing, not of any political party. And when those politicians went to the Garda front lines last week to try and defuse the situation, they were pepper sprayed. And the community here is saying to me, look, what chance have we talking to the government if our own politicians are being attacked by the police force that's meant to be protecting us? And that's the feeling here now. That was a very bad mistake by the police force here in Ireland, and it must be said, the Minister, Helen McAtee.
Dougie Beattie, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on that, frankly, quite shocking story. And it does always seem to be the poorer, working-class communities that are the ones that are the sharp end of these immigration policies. Amy, I'm coming to you first. You would potentially say that lady that was complaining about her daughters not being able to walk down the road is racist.
No, I think what we need to remember is the asylum seekers don't want to be in that detention centre any more than the local residents don't want them there. They want to have their claims processed. They want to be able to get on with their lives. So the real problem here is the processing speed. Nobody wants to be cooped up in a 3-man to 1-room hotel in name only, for an indefinite period of time.
This is Ireland, it's not the UK we're talking about, so why didn't they just apply for asylum as they can do, in theory, easier in an EU country?
I think we've pushed this problem onto Ireland slightly because by being the 20th per capita in Europe, we don't take our fair share of asylum seekers. We are in a much stronger position, stability-wise, economically, to be able to accept and house and accommodate asylum seekers than Ireland is. So this is a knock-on effect of us not being responsible. I don't think. I think the key thing is not to forget that.
Sorry, we've got just a quick running out of time for the news. Emma, a quick word.
Well, no, it's funny how when posh NIMBYs object to planning and changes in their local communities, that's OK and that's valid. But when locals have very, very valid concerns, really valid concerns about safety, about space, about resources in their local communities, they're seen as xenophobic.
Right, OK. We're running out of time, unfortunately. A fascinating report from doing it. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Sunday. There's loads more coming up in today's show. But first, it is time for the news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Dawn. 2:30. In the United States, Donald Trump says nobody warned him of a possible threat in the moments before he was shot by a gunman in Pennsylvania. In an interview with Fox News, the Republican nominee said the lack of information was a mistake and the event should have been delayed. It comes as the Secret Service faces ongoing questions over how the would-be assassin was able to wander outside the security perimeter before taking his position on a roof. That was even after local officers had reported him acting suspiciously. And in his first rally since that assassination attempt, Donald Trump told the supporters there that he took a bullet for democracy. He appeared alongside his VP running mate, J.D. Vance, in Michigan, their first joint appearance. Trump is hoping to win the crucial swing state that President Biden took in 2020. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris insists that President Biden will win the US election, despite continuing pressure from fellow Democrats to stand aside. The vice president was making the case to stick with the 81-year-old, even as some big-money donors expect him to end his campaign. She's increasingly being seen as a possible replacement for her boss. Back here, the Chancellor says she's hoping to boost our pension pots by around £11,000. Rachel Reeves believes a review of retirement savings could unlock billions more in investment, with schemes encouraged to invest in assets such as infrastructure. The Treasury says it would boost economic growth and ensure better returns for savers. And a hate crime investigation is now underway after 3 pride flags were vandalised outside a Forest Gate railway station in East London. The Met is appealing for info after the pavement paintings were covered with spray paint in the early hours of Friday. Officers have been trawling through CCTV footage, making house-to-house inquiries and conducting forensic investigations. Right, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Ray. Now, I'm just going to read this one up very, very quickly. This is from James. James, good afternoon. I very proudly voted for Brexit so the UK could once again become a sovereign country. I also campaigned on the Nigel Farage bus. I did know exactly what I was voting for, and I am not thick, racist or bigoted either. Please don't assume that's the case. Thank you very much. Keep your messages coming, and this is exactly how you do it. It is very simple, she says, desperately trying to remember. You visit gbnews.com/your say and join this conversation, or message me on our socials at GB News. There's loads more coming up on today's show, so you really don't want to go anywhere. In an exclusive interview with GB News, newly elected MP Natalie Fleet reveals how she was groomed and bravely revealed what happened when she became a mum at just 15. It's a shocking interview, you really need to hear it. All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't get too far.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next few days, some rain at times, but equally when the sun comes through it should feel pleasantly warm for the time of year. We've got a small wedge of high pressure moving in from the west, giving a lot of fine weather today, but notice low pressure gathering out towards the west. That will start to feed outbreaks of rain and across the northern parts of Northern Ireland there as we head into the afternoon. A few showers towards the north and west of the UK elsewhere, certainly towards the northwest of Scotland, a good scattering of showers into the afternoon and fairly breezy here as well. The best of the sunshine the further south and east you go, and in the sunshine towards the southeast of England, it should feel pleasantly warm, temperatures up to 23, even 24 Celsius, that's into the mid-70s in Fahrenheit, nearer towards the high teens towards the north and northwest of the UK. So to end the day, we'll see a scattering of showers across Scotland, a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers here. The best of the sunshine out towards the east and southeast of the country, with temperatures into the high teens in places. Further south into Northern Ireland and the far northwest of England, outbreaks of rain started to come in from the west, so pretty damp end of the day here. Whereas across England and Wales, apart from a few showers out towards the west, plenty of fine weather to end the day, particularly across central and southeastern parts of England. And here we'll still see temperatures into the low 20s Celsius to end the afternoon. As we go through the evening into the overnight period, those outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland will start to push eastwards to affect parts of southern Scotland and the north of England too. Some of those outbreaks of rain could well turn quite heavy by Monday morning. Whereas towards the north there, clearer spells, and some clearer spells towards the southeast too, with outbreaks of rain moving in across Wales and the southwest of England. Turning quite chilly towards the north, temperatures into single figures here, but elsewhere holding up into the low to mid-teens. As for Monday, well, those outbreaks of rain across the central slice of the UK there give way to brighter skies with a scattering of showers into the afternoon, a few heavy, potentially even thundery showers in places. Further south across England and Wales, outbreaks of rain clear towards the east to give way to a brighter afternoon, and holding on to some brightness towards the far north of Scotland too, with temperatures peaking in the southeast at 24, possibly locally 25 Celsius.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Niesman, your TV, online and digital radio. Now, GB News, Gloria De Piero has a new Real Me interview. Newly elected Labour MP for Bolsover, Natalie Fleet. She reveals how she became pregnant at 15 after being groomed by an older man, and that has moved her to a voice of reason for all those women that have children in far from ideal circumstances. Have a watch, it's moving stuff.
Natalie Fleet, MP. You are the Labour MP for Bolsover. You've been the Labour MP for Bolsover for a couple of weeks. How does it feel?
It feels like the absolute honour of a lifetime. I am very excited. I am a little bit terrified and scared because the palace can be quite intimidating, but I'm just absolutely determined to work out how you do all the things that you need to do so that I can get real change for local people. That is the most exciting part.
Why did you even choose this life? Why politics? Why not? I don't know, there's loads of jobs out there.
I worked for a trade union and I loved it. And it meant that I could go to the shop in my pyjamas and nobody cared. You know, if you forgot milk and at the end of the night you were having a pyjama day, you could just nip and nobody cared. It's quite normal where I come from. And now I've chosen to do something that comes with loads of security risks and is quite very different and very public, hence doing things like this. But the reason that I do it is because when I was younger, things were tough. And I had a Labour government. I was 13 when Labour came to power. And when we were homeless, the Labour government made sure that there was enough housing stock for us to be rehoused. And then when I had my first child at a very young age, I could send her to a Sure Start nursery. I could carry on, go to university with a first in the family scholarship. I could work in a minimum wage job. I could send my children, because I've got two by then, to a Sure Start nursery. And it just felt like I needed the support of the state, and my God, I got it. And then right now, before I did this, I worked for a trade union, and I was absolutely desperate to give back to my teachers. My teachers had invested in me. The Labour government made sure that my teachers had time to teach me and look after me. And I then saw that I was paying taxes, and they weren't being invested in young children like me or teachers. We needed a new government. On my estate, the estate where we were rehoused, I looked around and there were, you know, people struggled. And I see now people that I was close to when I was younger that are now suffer with addiction or poverty scars, ultimately poverty scars. And what poverty has done to me is meant that I work and work and work and work and work. And
you have poverty scars? Do you have poverty? Do you feel like you have
yes, yeah. So when somebody knocks on the door, it's hilarious because I knock on people's doors, but if somebody knocks on my door, I won't answer it because I'm still scared it's the bailiffs. It's that what happens to you in your childhood stays with you. And when we were little, I felt like we were struggling, but we were an exception, whereas now it's a third of children in every class.
Okay.
And in areas in Bolsover, it's more than that. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. And so therefore, I could either be angry about what's happened over the past 14 years, sad and feel powerless, or I could come into Parliament and try and do something about it. I mean, what an honour.
You talked about you became a young mum.
Yeah.
How young?
I was 15 when I got pregnant.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
You're not the only 15-year-old to get pregnant, but for every 15-year-old who becomes pregnant, that is tough. You become a mum at 16.
Yeah. Yeah, and we had the highest teenage pregnancy rates in Europe, so I definitely didn't feel like I was on my own. And the last Labour government implemented a teenage pregnancy strategy, so it meant that...
I'm going to stop you talking about politics, Natalie. Stop.
Sorry.
You can do that in loads of interviews that are going to come. Okay. But I want to know, you're 15 years old, you get pregnant, you're a mum at 16. Yeah. This is not a common story in Parliament.
Yeah.
It's not completely unique, but it is certainly not common. That is a lot of responsibility on a 15-year-old's shoulder.
Mm-hmm. So she's 23 now.
Wow.
And she is the absolute love of my life. Not enough people think we're sisters. I would like that to happen more for anybody watching that would like to call her my sister. I am so proud of everything she is. I am thrilled. She makes me proud every single day. Her 2 dogs, her 3 goats and her chickens in her own home. And I'm so proud of her. But at the time, when I was 15, I felt full of shame and guilt and responsibility. And all I was determined to do is make sure that she had a life that was as good as she would have had to any age parent. That was what I was determined to do. I didn't think about me or the impact. Now, 23 years later, I look back and I think, that wasn't okay. That was an older man that was potentially, I mean, now we have labels like grooming that we didn't have then. I didn't know we were having unprotected sex. You know, I was a child and this is statutory rape. You know, at the time, this isn't something that we're talking about. It's not how I saw myself. I saw myself as, you know, at 15, you definitely think you're old enough to do all these things. But another thing that I can do, now I'm here, is I really want to be a voice for all of those people, all of those women that have children in far from ideal circumstances. So I wanted to talk to her about where she came from and about what happened. And it was really difficult for me to say to her, I don't think this was entirely consensual and I think I might have been groomed and I don't think this is an appropriate relationship. She took it really well. But what I did is I Googled in advance just some tips, just a fact sheet on how to... So something about children conceived via rape, statutory or otherwise, and I found nothing. I found absolutely nothing. I found out there were fact sheets about rape being used as a war crime. There was nothing, there was no acknowledgement that it happens in the UK. And the more research I've done, I've found that there are over 3,000 conceptions every year from rape, but there's no charity to support those women. There's no help, advice, support, helpline that you can go to think, how do I tell my child that I love, that it's everything to me, that this is where they came from? And then most importantly, it is biologically very clear what happened because I was 15 years old. Yeah. And he was older, and I can prove where she came from. So that's statutory rape. But there are so many women that this happens to. Those 3,000 that we estimate it happens 2 a year, which is probably the tip of the iceberg, that don't speak about it, that don't say because they know they won't be believed. And then even if by some miracle we move to a society where women were believed, once you say, this is your child, then that man can come and have access to that child. It doesn't matter how that child was conceived. Even if you prove it's rape, that man can have access to that child and help to bring it up. And that's absolutely terrifying. This is a perpetrator that has hurt the mother that can then have access to the child. And again, I think that having a platform in Parliament to be able to talk more about it and do something about it is actual honour of a lifetime.
You may or may not want to answer this, by the way. As you are describing what happened to you, my whole body is just shaking to hear about that part of your life story. Are you in touch with that man?
No.
So he hasn't wanted access to your daughter,
no,
thankfully. But it is the fact that he technically could.
Yes.
That is something that you want to turn into a campaign.
Yes. He told me to have an abortion at the time. He never met her. He never wanted anything to do with her. And he was very dismissive. And he told me many times that he knew lots of ways that he wouldn't have to pay a penny towards her because all his friends had already evaded CSA all of their children's lives. And he would do the same. And he was very intent on telling me all the ways that he wouldn't contribute to her life. I thought, I don't need you to. But I didn't realise how lucky I was at the time because the fact that he didn't want anything to do with her life was a good thing, because if he had wanted something to do with her, he could have, regardless of the way she was conceived.
And is that your mission? You'll have many missions, but that is a very, very deeply personal mission, which you may be the first, according to my own recollections, to speak out about it. This is your mission, to make sure that women like you are supported, that the person who has caused harm to the mum do not have access to the child.
Yeah, and that child, that precious, wonderful miracle of a child, has support about being comfortable with where they come from.
How do you overcome something like that? How often are you traumatised by it? Are you daily? Is this a daily trauma to you to recollect that?
23 years later, I still have weekly nightmares about it, but it's not the only part of my life that I have weekly nightmares about. And I think that children, the lives that they live, have a huge impact for the rest of their lives. So now I have huge privilege and advantage, and I'm thrilled to be here. But what happened in my childhood still has a massive impact on me, which is why, and I know you say we're not allowed to get to the politics, but God, I'm so excited about what the next Labour government is going to do in terms of making sure that kids aren't hungry when they learn. That's incredible. And people say we're not being adventurous enough, we're not being bold enough. We're going to make sure that we're smashing down barriers to opportunity so that there can be more stories like mine. I am a product of the last Labour government. It wasn't a perfect government, but it changed my life and it was transformational. And the reason that it's worth doing a job where you can't go to the shop in your pyjamas anymore, but worse still, you have a panic alarm in your bag, your own children are potentially at risk. That's really awful. But when it means that you can make other children's lives who aren't as fortunate better, and that's incredible.
How many children have you got, Natalie?
4. I would have had 6, but my husband said, because I like to have them in 2s, 2 girls and 2 boys, my husband said 4 was enough for him to look after while I did this.
Well, exactly. So is he the primary? I mean, I guess he must be.
Yeah, he's the gas engineer. He's absolutely not a plumber, and he would like me to say that for the record, because apparently there's a difference.
And that one, did somebody say he was a
I must
plumber?
have said it at some point.
All right.
And it's now been quoted in an article, and he is not very happy because he's absolutely a gas engineer. And it means that he can be the primary carer, and they are very lucky to have him. I chose well. He's a good man and a fantastic dad.
Wow, he does sound like an amazing dad.
Yeah,
an amazing
husband.
You talked about getting the panic alarm. It shouldn't be necessary. Do you feel scared?
I don't, because I see Kim Leadbeater in Parliament, and I think if she can be brave enough to do it, then my God, I can. What isn't very nice is to see my family scared. So 23-year-old, 20-year-old, 15-year-old, they're all aware. But the reason that I told them is, you know, we're okay. We're all okay. And there's lots of people that aren't. And therefore, it's a risk, but the risk is small and it's worth taking. But better still, let's fight for a nicer kind of politics. Let's do things like this so they can see that I'm a normal person that wants to come from my area down to Parliament to make it better for local people. And that's what lots of MPs want. It's just make their area better.
Final question.
Yes.
It's a bit lighter. We've been on a journey during this interview for sure. There's lots of bars in Parliament. I mean, I used to frequent them quite a bit myself. While I was in there, do you go to them? Do you have a drink? Do you... over to you.
I love Parliament's bars, and I still can't believe in 2024 we have a workplace with so many bars, but I love being in them. What I realised that I had to do is that I noticed that, you know, with all of this trauma that we've spoken about, addiction is something that I felt was a real risk for me. I heard what Alistair Campbell said about the bars in Parliament. I knew the pressures I was coming into. And 2 years in October, I haven't had a drink, and I now love and enjoy the bars, and I can have a 0% beer and enjoy it with everybody else, knowing that I'm not going to be the one that headbutts the Tories or anything like that.
Natalie Fleet, you are the first interview of this new generation of MPs. I feel very lucky that you are the first, and I also feel that Parliament is lucky to have you on those green benches. Natalie Fleet, MP for Bolsover, thank you.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we've got a story and a half to tell you and bring you now. Our very own GB News political correspondent, who we love very much, Catherine Foster, joins us in the studio, and she's smiling, but she wasn't smiling for the past few days.
Two of her sons, Matthew and Andrew, were reported missing in Bali.
I got a text from a friend saying, can you give us a call, a bit worried about them. Then spoke to a girl they'd befriended who was in Sweden, but they'd met on their travels. And she told me that they'd gone up the mountain. By the time I found out, they'd been missing for 30 hours. They'd gone up the mountain on the Tuesday night, British time. This was the Thursday morning, without a guide. And they'd told her it was really hard. And she told them to turn back, but they hadn't. And they'd sent screenshots from this app with this trail that they were following on the app, screenshots of the app in case there was a problem, and a Snapchat of a Matthew avatar at the top. And she said, I know they made it to the top because I could see that his phone had nearly died. But the trail had actually closed many years ago. So the app, we will need to make sure that that gets taken off the app. But, you know, technology saved them in the end because it was the screenshots and it was the messages that they'd sent, but they should never have been without a guide.
But what were you doing during those 30 hours that Mum couldn't, when the phone died and Mum couldn't get in touch? Where were you? What were you up to?
Well, we were trying to figure out the best course of action, because it started to pour with rain. The amount of rain created a river, like a stream.
Yeah.
We were like, oh,
yeah,
let's follow the stream downhill, and then the sun set, and we just had to like sleep in the bushes in the jungle.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your TV, online and on digital radio. In an exclusive interview, GB News newly elected MP Natalie Fleet has revealed that she was groomed and revealed what happened when she became a mum at 15. It was a very emotional interview with our very own Gloria De Piero there. Obviously, it was a horror story. Emma, what did you make of what she had to say?
Yeah, I mean, it was very moving. I think it's really important and actually quite refreshing to hear some different perspectives from our sort of political leaders. I think it's very, very important that you hear kind of, different life experiences from our elected MPs. Staggeringly wealthy, white, male, stale, middle-aged male politicians. Nothing against middle-aged men, but we've had a real generation of this, and it's very important to hear from single mums, from women who've been through what Natalie Fleet has been through, and just to hear some different life perspectives, people who've gone through tough times, and I think that she'll bring that to politics, and that's really important.
Many of you are agreeing. Natalie Fleet, you are amazing. That's from Jenny and a chap as well called Duncan. Thank you for getting in touch. Natalie is an amazing woman, in my opinion. Thank you for being so strong. What did you make of what you heard her say, Amy?
Well, in the interview, Natalie said there's no acknowledgement that this kind of thing happens in the UK, and it turns out that 3,300 births a year come about through circumstances like Natalie's. And I hope that this interview can raise awareness of this problem, hopefully help some of the victims of this. I know that victims of grooming gangs more widely, grooming gangs, have not had adequate compensation yet, and that their counselling funding is really minimal. So hopefully we can, Natalie's story can start to spark up a conversation about the victims of grooming gangs more widely.
It is all a subject we need to talk more about. Thank you very much, Emma Wolf and Amy Nichol, for joining me this Sunday lunchtime. Really appreciate your time. I've been Dawn Neeson. This has been GB News Sunday. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. But please don't go anywhere. Nana is up next with a cracking show. But first, the most important thing we all need to know this weekend, Sunday afternoon, what's the weather doing?
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 860